everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Universe. I'm Jeremy Schulman at FF Rebel. Underneath me, we have Jesse Moeller at JMoeller05. We are here for the 10-round Superflex Dynasty Startup Mock Draft. This is our first edition of the offseason. We're going to mock it out, see where these guys falls, and we have included rookies this time. So lots changing, watching the combine and some O-linemen right now. That's probably not going to affect much, but yesterday sure did. Jesse, how you doing? How you feeling? And are you ready for this mock?
I am as ready as I'm gonna be. Let me tell you what, we were talking about the ADP and kind of how all over the place it is with these sleeper drafts. So if you are in a sleeper draft room and you are doing a startup, you will massively notice just how just out of whack that Dynasty ADP is. So if you're drafting, you kind of have to come in with your own rules and who you prefer, because you're not going to find the guy where you want to see them. So just keep that in mind when you're drafting. So this is kind of like us experimenting with the rookies, throwing it all in there. But overall, yeah, man. I mean, we had the combine going on yesterday. It was a major day. You were there. You saw all the fun players that shined out. Today it's linemen, so it's not as exciting for us fantasy players. But they're going to be guys going to offenses. They're going to open up holes for running backs and quarterbacks. So overall, I think it was just a great weekend that we get to continue off throughout.
Yeah, man. And we had some big risers, a couple of fallers as well. We were checking out the RAS scores yesterday, and we have another pod there that you guys can check out to see our thoughts on the first couple of days of the combine. And those things are going to factor in immediately. It certainly did change our 3-round rookie mock that we posted last night. And it's going to change the way that we take these guys and how we view them and the rest of the players here in Dynasty. So I don't know, Jesse. I think we got the 101 and we got SC lined up. So what do you say we fire this off?
Well, let's get this bad boy rolling. I am more than excited to start this one up. So 1 sec. Problem is Aaron is controlling this draft, so I don't know when this is going to start. So yippee.
Well, while we wait for this to start and SC waits with bated breath here, who are we, looking at now in the first round? I know it's super flex, right? So we're looking at quarterbacks for sure. But in years past, it depends obviously what room you're in, but sometimes it's 10, 11 quarterbacks in the first round. Sometimes, it's Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, boom, 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 wide receivers. And, even as far back as 2 years ago, we were taking a ton of running backs in the first round. So how do you like to approach the first round, and what do you kind of expect to see here or in most Dynasty startup drafts?
Yeah, so for me, it's changed over the first years. When I first got into Dynasty, I was like, oh yeah, I'll punt quarterback. I'll get Kirk Cousins. I'll get these guys, right? And I'll have the capable guys that nobody likes, but they just produce fancy points. Now I've shifted just because the market's so heavy on quarterbacks. If you do not get them early in startups, like, you're constantly chasing them, and this is going to be the cheapest they will be for your entire time, especially with these elite guys like the Josh Allens, the Burrows, the Lamars, the Strouds. And then we get into the rookies where we talk about, Caleb Williams, where he's going basically on the turn first round already. Like, he's a first round startup pick. We get Drake May in the second. Same thing with, why am I blanking on his name? My favorite, Jane Daniels. He's also in there too. So yeah, if it's really the haves and the have-nots at quarterbacks. Because if you look at how startup ADP goes, it's about QB 11 is Kyler Murray going in the mid-second. After that, it's basically pick your quarterback. There's about 5 or 6 guys that you can make a case for. But those are like the truly elite quarterbacks. And then it's just like, all right, why am I paying the vast majority for a second-round pick when I could get like Goff in the 4th or Bryce Young in the 5th? Like, so you kind of have to weigh the cost versus the startup build and how you go over that. What do you look for when you're going through a startup mock? Are you basically like trying to find your best value, or are you coming in like playing the market kind of like water?
Yeah, I mean, you that's the old adage, right? You're Bruce Lee, you're like water, and I think the fantasy community has adopted that as much as possible, because it's changing on a pick by pick basis in terms of where you need to look, right? So for example, I'm sat here in this particular mock at 110. I like to kind of be at the back end because I find that a strength of mine is kind of being able to pick out value where it's left on the board. But in the beginning, that's kind of not what you're doing. You're more or less looking for the guys that you want to go with. And, everyone's kind of got a plan from the jump. So, but it changes, right? So for example, if I'm at 110 and 8 quarterbacks go off the board, chances are, again, I'm not too comfortable with it, but in years past, I would have taken a quarterback and then I would have punted my QB2, right?
Yeah.
But now it might be interesting. Quarterback is kind of so deep, and there's a lot of young guys coming in that it may be beneficial if 8 QBs go off the board before the one, 8 QBs and Justin Jefferson. Then I'm sitting at the 110 instead of taking Jamar Chase or Brees Hall. I might be looking at, just grabbing 2 quarterbacks as it turns around and then filling out the rest of my roster from there. But personally, I've had a lot of success punting quarterback. Like you said, taking the Kirk Cousins and, not this past season, but Daniel Jones or Geno Smith, finding those QBs that fall. Like this year, Trevor Lawrence could be one of those who falls out of the first round, depending, again, on how many quarterbacks go. Dak could be one of those. And those guys have the potential and ability to be plenty productive and add that rushing element that you like to see at quarterback. So the short answer is, I'm going to see how the board falls. But the longer answer is, we all go in with a plan. And as long as we can execute on that plan early, I think in the first round Superflex, you probably going quarterback unless things go crazy.
Yeah, and a guy who was really highly valued last year, even though he struggled going into, was Deshaun Watson, and now he's really just tanked as far as value goes. And this is kind of the make or break for year for him in Dynasty, where people are still willing to pay like top 5 startup pick value for him. If he struggles again this year, people are just going to throw their hands up and treat him like Russell Wilson, where it's like, all right, I can get him QB for like round 10. So you kind of have to make the assurance. And the key with the guys that you're taking in the first round is not just like the skill set and how good they are. It's how insulated they are. That is such a key aspect of them. It's the floor that they present. Because they're, even if, say, like Jordan Love struggles, like Kyler Murray struggles, or, like we get in the higher guys like Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, if they have a bad year, they get injured, their value's not going anywhere. Like, that asset's going to stay secure. You might drop to like the 110, 202 or whatever it is, but you still have a top 24 starter pick.
Yeah.
It's not like a Tua Tagovailoa situation where he could fall to the 4th round, or, like Bryce Young. I get it. He was the 101 last year in rookie drafts, but he could completely fall, just like we're talking about with Deshaun Watson. Bryce Young has a thing going for him too, because he was abysmal as a rookie. So he needs to show it out. So you kind of have to, weigh the pros and cons of like why it's so important to get those truly elite quarterbacks. And then if you're punting it, you have to realize like a year from now, if you punt and they don't hit, like you could be dealing with 0 quarterbacks on your roster. That's the life of living kind of on the edge. And I mean, I've played that way forever. I don't mind personally living on the edge, because then you can just transition into a rebuild, kick the whole thing off, go full circle with it. But it's an interesting kind of like a thought process to play out in your head to see like, all right, here's where I'm going to go going into the draft. Is this value going to work? Are guys going to be in that tier I hope they are? Do I trade back? Do I trade up? Like, where do I go from here? So I think Dynasty startup drafts are always a fundamental exercise, personally.
Yeah. And especially in a Superflex draft, and in a Superflex mock draft, I'm super interested in kind of pushing those boundaries a little bit and figuring out where that quarterback value is if I don't take 2 quarterbacks really early. So not to preview my strategy here, but I probably won't go quarterback. We'll see. But, if I don't, and I'm looking to fill that QB2 hole a little bit later on, right? I'm trying to figure out if, what's the value of a Baker Mayfield right now? What's the value of Jared Goff? And where do we feel, comfortable taking those guys? Is it 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th, 8th round? So we'll see. But we kicked it off here, Jesse. So why don't you run us through what we got so far and what you're thinking at the 105?
All right, so it's Superflex, so no doubt in anyone's mind, we know how those first 4 are going. I am a little surprised to see Burrow go ahead of Lamar and CJ Stroud, but it's the big 3. Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, like those are the tier of themselves, those guys, just because the fancy points they provide, it's such an edge, like they have that. And then we get into Joe Burrow, 104, like this is tier 2 for me at quarterback, and why I picked 105. I kind of wanted to be in the middle and just play this tier out for me personally, because I don't have much of a difference with the 2. Like I love Lamar with his rushing upside. You could go CJ Stroud. If you want to go really bold here, you can make the case for Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb, those top 3 wide receivers. There's no way in heck I'm doing that. You're just assuming a lot of risk personally. Like I need those tier 2 quarterbacks to be gone before I consider those wide receivers. Yep. And this gets into the case of like why I have Caleb Williams as 101 is because it's not just like the floor, it's also the ceiling. There's no situation where like no matter how good Justin Jefferson, he's ever going to be the 101 startups. Like that's just not in the cards for him. Whereas Caleb Williams, he could be like past Mahomes at some point and be the 101 startup pick. So you kind of have to like realize with the positional value and scarcity of quarterbacks, they'll always get a leg up. So for me personally, I'm a big Lamar guy. Like I still prefer him over CJ Stroud. You could take CJ Stroud here. It's really up to you guys, but locking in just the elite quarterback, I think, is the way to go here. So I'm going to take Lamar, not worry about my quarterback. I'll have a legit QB1 and go from there.
Yep.
And then, Stroud goes right after that.
Yeah, Stroud right away, of course. And there it is, right? Okay. This is interesting for me. Like I am the last few picks, right? We had Stroud at 106, 107 is Jefferson, 108 CD Lamb, and 109 is Justin Herbert. So for me here, and maybe not for everybody, but there's an interesting kind of tier break here at quarterback, right? I know a lot of people are kind of quick to throw Anthony Richardson in this tier. I know we have Kyler Murray who's sitting there. I know we have Jordan Love and Brock Purdy, and those guys are all kind of in the conversation, right? And so depending on the flavor and your belief about fantasy, and do you want that elite youth with relative safety and Brock Purdy in a great system, or do you want kind of the intense upside of Jordan Love and everything that he showed out with last season and all those weapons, or of the even more intense upside of an Anthony Richardson who is kind of completely unknown but looked great in a small sample? And so for me, all of those quarterbacks are kind of the end of the tier. I think you would argue last year that Trevor Lawrence was kind of part of this previous tier. Now, after last season, it's really hard to kind of group him in with that second tier that you were mentioning there. So for me, there's really only one option as Aaron joins us from, I don't know, the strip mall. I don't know what's going on over there.
I'm trying to find our third box. I don't know what it is.
But for me, I'm going to risk it here that all of those quarterbacks that I mentioned that are possibilities here at the 110 for me are kind of lumped into the same group. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll the dice and take Jamar Chase, and then we're going to see what comes back around at quarterback. It's likely with this strategy after Aaron goes at the 112 that I'm going to be picking up a quarterback here at the 203.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You're good.
I can't stay. I got in an accident at work. That's why I didn't get the draft started on time.
Oh, geez. Shit.
I got here.
Seems like you're okay at least.
I looked and I said, "Oh yeah, someone hit my bus. I'm in a bus, so it's fine." But I looked and
someone
I said,
hit your bus, not you hit someone.
Yeah. No, they hit my bus and they messed up their car. But I looked and I said, "Oh, I was supposed to start this draft 14 minutes ago, so I gotta go." I just wanted to let you know that's why I didn't get it done on time. I got in an accident.
Well, glad you're okay, but you're picking on the turn here.
I know. Okay, I gotta go. I'll pick it. I gotta repick that for myself.
Okay. See it.
Oh man. And we're back. Nothing like a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're back on it. And we've got 2 full rounds of our Dynasty Startup Superflex mock. The first one we've done this year. And we kind of left off where we were talking about what's kind of that value of taking the quarterback. And we were talking specifically about Caleb Williams. We like him as a turn guy. But at the 208, that's a significant value. At the same time, personally, I need to see it to believe it. So while Caleb Williams is, I think, a surefire talent in the NFL, does he get off to a hot start in year one? Does it take him a couple years? I don't want to deal with that. I know Jordan Love is going to be a good quarterback. He's going to be a top 12 guy easily next year. He finished, I believe, as a QB5.
QB5 or QB6, yeah.
So I want that top talent, still young, still elite, and in a great situation. Caleb goes to the Bears, as we all expect. That could take a little bit of extra time, even though the situation is better than we would expect for most 101 QBs who are selected in the NFL draft. So Caleb goes at 208. And then if you follow along with us at the 209, we have Garrett Wilson, followed by Tyreek Hill at 210. Brock Purdy at 211. So there's that elite safety and youth pick there. But we know he's in a great system, putting up numbers. And then finally round out the round, 212. AJ Brown can round the round. And SC is again on the clock at the 301. So he's gone Mahomes. He's gone AJ Brown. So curious here what he's going to do at the 3-1.
I mean, there's some serious value staring him in the face. I'm not sure where he's planning on going with it. I know he does love the wide receivers, so there's quite a good amount of them available right now. Like we have Puka, people love still Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, and those guys. There's also a couple rookie wide receivers we haven't seen drafted. And then there's basically pick your poison with running back and tight end. Like we haven't even hit the tight end one yet, right? So
is everything up and running properly? I'm having technical difficulties to say the least. I exited the last stream and the whole thing ended. So
I think you ended it on accident. It's all good.
Did it? Okay. Well, then I couldn't even unpause the draft. It's unpaused now. So I'm not going to be able to pause this thing again. I'm having Wi-Fi issues here at work. So it's just going to run all the way solid through, and I'm going to do my best to make my picks, and you guys are going to have to handle the stream. So this time I'm going to leave, and I'm going to try not to cancel the stream. So good luck, boys. I'll see you later.
Nice.
All right, good luck.
Nothing like a little high drama to add to the high drama of a fantasy.
It's always fun, right? So what's interesting about this draft is Dak went. We had Chris Olave, Puka Nacua, who Puka Nacua was going to be in my selection. Yeah. Kyler Murray, getting Kyler Murray 304 is just insane value. Yeah, like I don't know. That's just printing money at that point because we're getting the rookie wide receiver 1, Marvin Harrison, right there, who went at the 206. You're pairing him more than likely with Arizona. You have Trey McBride. They're going to add more like running backs and wide receivers to that room. It's just going to be a very fun roster.
Yep.
And he's out of the Cliff Kingsbury shackles. Like I'm very curious to see how good Kyler Murray does as a fantasy asset because he's still been, I think he was top 8 in points per game last year, even though it looked like he struggled. Like he's just awesome. So I think that's one of my favorite picks so far. So
yeah. And one thing we know about Arizona too is that defense is not going to get significantly better, right? We got a defensive coach there, but it's still a multi-year rebuild of that defense. So that's what we love for fantasy, right? We want to see Kyler having to air it out, run around like a madman. We don't want him handing off to James Conner or the ghost of James Conner or whoever else is back there in 2024. We want him airing it out, and he should be doing that this year.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the draft board right now. We've seen 2, 4, 6, 8. We've already seen 10 wide receivers go off the board. It does seem like we're almost hitting a tier cutoff at the wide receiver position because it's a lot of guys I like, but not a lot of guys I love. It's just the 2 rookie wide receivers are actually the picks I would go here if I'm going to go wide receiver. If I want to go tight end, like you have literally any tight end. Trey McBride's my tight end 1, so I could take the tight end 1. A lot of people love Laporta. A lot of people love a guy that is not even in the league yet, and that's Mr. Brock Bowers. We'll see where he goes, so you could go that route. Running back, it's a lot of the same. So like I'm looking at these running backs. It's like I love Devon Achane and like the James Cooks of the world. There's Kyron Williams, Travis Etienne, who it came out yesterday that he's going to get a reduced workload, so you probably don't want to pick him at the moment. And Jonathan Taylor. It's just a tier of running backs that it's like it feels kind of gross to take them. That's where Dynasty's at. So I'm going to take my guy. I'm just going to go get Rome right now, and we're just going to take Odunze, and we're just going to lock it in.
Nice.
Yes, sir. We're going for it big time.
Talk about it.
Yes, sir. He's the prototypical ex-alpha like wide receiver. He's 6'2", 212. He can do everything, consistently plays on the outside, can win the short and intermediate. He's deep. He ran a 4.45 40. I know people were worried about his speed. He's fast. Like he's a guy that you put into an offense and he could step in and make an immediate impact. You don't have to scheme him at touches. You don't have to put him in the slot. You don't have to do things. You just put him out there and you say, hey, go win the routes. And he's like, I got you. Don't worry about it. So I was gonna take Puka, and then once Puka went, I go, all right, I'll just take the rookie wide receiver. That's the guy I love.
Now the viewers should know that you're a noted Seattle. Are you from Seattle? I know you're from Washington State.
Yeah.
Where are you?
So I've lived in the Seattle area the majority of my life. I moved around a few other places, but yeah, I'm more familiar with like that program than I am other college programs.
Husky
my family grew
here.
up. Yeah, my brother went to UW, graduated. Yeah, there's definitely some connection. Like my aunt and uncle, like. They've been season ticket holders for like 50 years at UW. Yeah. So like they went to the national championship, all that fun stuff. So yeah, there's connection there. But yeah, like when I watched the all 22, like taking away the game, like when you watch all 22, like it's really fun. Like he's a really fun prospect. The things he could do, I think translate easier than Malik Neighbors. Like that's the one difference for me is like all of his slot production. You kind of have to, it does like, it's not really a red flag, but it's the thing I'm worried about more, not translating easily. Obviously, there's a connection to Justin Jefferson, who landed around a slot, at LSU a few years ago. So, maybe they could just have the 2 greatest like slot wide receivers that come in the league and just do their thing. It wouldn't shock me at all. But yeah, I think those top 3 rookie wide receivers is a tier of 1, and they're just all incredible prospects. You should be happy to have any one of those 3. Like if you can get them in the top 3 rounds, like you should cash that money and just go with it because I think they're
And speaking of, I am going to go ahead and do that and cash in if I can find him here, Malik Neighbors, and I'm going to explain why. I mean, that you don't need to explain why Malik Neighbors going here between Brandon Ayuk and Nico Collins makes a ton of sense and is a crazy value. But personally, in my build, right, I love to have young elite productive wide receivers. We're assuming Malik Neighbors is going to be that. Jamar Chase has proven to be that when healthy. If I compare that with a young elite quarterback who can put up numbers, I'm going to go ahead and punt QB2 all the way down the road. Even though if you look at quarterback right now, you still have Jared Goff, Bryce Young, if you're a believer, Kirk Cousins, who's got certainly 2 to probably maybe 4 years. I'd say 2 years of elite production, and then potentially 4 years or 5 years of production left. You got Matt Stafford down there, so there's got Baker Mayfield who showed out last year. So you got plenty of quarterbacks here. But for my money, it's just not worth it here in the 4th round to like scramble to get my QB2. Yeah. I made my bed when I didn't go QB at the top of the round in rounds 1 and 2. So right now, I'm just going to keep grabbing value there. Now, if we look at how the rest of those picks paired out, and actually the whole of the 3rd round, from the beginning, we had Dak, Olave, Nakua, Kyler, Rome, as Jesse talked about. Then we had Justin Fields, Jalen Waddle, Brandon Ayuk, Kyron Williams, who is RB4 off the board, which I think is pretty much chalk at this point, but I'm not signing up for that chalk. I mean, RB, like you said, is kind of a massive wasteland. Like, what are you thinking about? It was Kyron at RB4 and then JT at RB5 here at the beginning of the 4th. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Right? I'm taking JT every freaking time. They're just like, there's the assurance with JT. He just got he's got the contract. He's in there. We just don't know with Kyron. We have 1 year of production. Like there is question marks with him in that offense. Obviously, he was incredible last year. No one's disappointed that. But we're playing Dynasty, and being a late round pick, like, the assurances are not there from Kyron. Like, you need to see improvement in another year. So I hate paying that premium price for him. I would much rather target the cheaper running backs if we're going to go that route without JT. Like, you can go get, Rachaad White later on, and he's going to do similar stuff, So in Barkley's a little bit older. It's fine. You can find ways to submit that production. And I will say, of the quarterback position, the only quarterbacks that I would pick in this range are those rookies that have not been taken yet. So I would take, Jaden Daniels or Drake May, because the upside is there to gain value. These other quarterbacks, like we talk about, the value is not going to gain. You're paying for production. So if I'm paying for production, this is a lot of old guy stuff. I don't want to pay a premium in draft capital. So that's the only thing. If you see guys, and this is why I took Odunze, because I could see him jumping into the high end tier of wide receivers. Sure. This is why I don't want to pay for a Waddle or a Nico. I think they're capped as far as ceiling goes. So these are the kind of delineations you have to make as a fantasy manager. Like, instead of treating it like redraft, you're like, all right, let me just take, the Christian McCaffrey, 101, right? Yeah. The installation is not going to be there. So that's kind of the decision we have to make as fantasy managers. And since we're not able to trade, it's a little bit different, because if we're trading, I would just hoard quarterbacks. I'd be like quarterbacks across the board all over.
That's it. And speaking of insulation, right, I'm facing an interesting decision here, so I'll talk about it in a second. But after I took Malik Neighbors at 310, it was Nico at 311. We had Tua and then Sam Laporta at the turn. So the first tight end goes off 401, and then Jonathan Taylor. So here, it would have been interesting for me to consider Laporta. I mean, he's my tight end 1, even though I feel like his value is a little riskier than someone like a Mark Andrews or even a Kyle Pitts at this stage, because we know it can't get worse for Pitts. It should get better. But Laporta just looks so good. I mean, was the tight end 1 last year. We know Kelsey's just facing age, potential for even more injuries. So he's down in the TE4 range-ish. Some people have him a little higher, some people a little lower. But that's kind of where you're looking at Kelsey and Dynasty. So for my purposes here, I might have taken Laporta there. A consideration for me is Mark Andrews here at the 403. He's a little older than, like you said, your tight end 1, Trey McBride. I think Kyle Pitts still needs to kind of just show that he can get back to that rookie year form. Mark Andrews, we know when he steps on the field, as long as he's completely healthy, he's going to do it. He's going to produce at a high level. He's a top 5 guy, no matter what, perennially. So that's not an issue. And the reason why I would, my turn's about to be up.
Yeah, you got 5 seconds. So
I'll just take, let's see. But instead, I'm going to take his teammate, and I'm going to take Drake London, because I feel like even more so than Pitts, he's someone who has done it routinely year after year since he stepped into the league. Maybe it's only 2 years. But since he stepped in the league and put up numbers, right? And he's put it up with subpar QB play, even with Kyle Pitts doing what he did in his rookie season. I mean, Drake London is just an absolute stud wide receiver. And when we're talking about insulation, I want a guy who's going to see the targets, who's young, and who's going to produce no matter what else is on the field with him. And if they get somebody like Kirk Cousins in there, I mean, it's Drake London to the moon, more so over Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing, right? It's not his talent. We know he's extremely talented. You look at his reception perception numbers, he's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. It's just he's in a terrible situation. Yeah. Now they have removed Arthur Smith. They're going to be more more forward offense. They're still going to run the ball a lot because you have Bijan Robinson, one of the best, if not the best running back in the NFL. Like they want to make him the centerpiece. But like Drake London, more than Kyle Pitts, has been the focal point of that offense through the passing attack. And that should continue. Like I have loved Kyle Pitts a long time. Like he's been just someone that has my heartstrings and probably will always have my heartstrings. But yeah, if they get Kirk Cousins, like Drake London value is going up 2 rounds. Like it's just immediately shooting up. So this is the thing. If you can buy Drake London still, why there's uncertainty, like I would do that. Yeah. It's it's just he's so good. So it's the thing, kind of like we're talking about with Brandon Ayuk. It's very similar. If they ever get into a good situation where they pass it a lot, you could see a 1,500 to 1,800 yard season from those guys. Like that's how talented wide receivers they are. So.
You've got 5 seconds here.
Oh crap! All right. Oh boy. Oh no, it's gonna auto pick me, isn't it?
Well, we can't.
No, not Andrew's mother, son of a.
Talk about what? Oh, can you do it? Oh, nice, good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not.
You can just replace and take whoever's left.
Aaron has to do it. I don't think he can do it. He's gonna mess with it. We'll see. If not, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I forgot we're on a 1 minute timer here, so that's
all right. We're good. Yeah, no, that changed when Aaron had his unfortunate accident, I think. But
all right. Yeah,
a reprieve. Oh, you got Michael Pittman.
Whatever. I mean, it's fine. I was gonna take Trey McBride, but Pittman's a stud. Like we'll just. It's shenanigans on the stream, folks. We're all over the place. It's not going well.
Trey McBride, Aaron.
All right, let's do this.
He's got a hunt for Trey. Oh, I got.
Oh, he's at the top. He's at the top. Oh yeah, Trey McBride, wherever I earn. This guy. We're the stream of this guy right here. Give me this dude. Yeah, we'll get there. So, anyways, I'll talk about it. Trey McBride, like he's a fantastic wide receiver, and I think he had the reason why I have him above Sam Laporta is because there's more athleticism, and I think he could trust the field better than Sam Laporta can. Like he's the guy that we're seeing. Like if anyone's going to replace Kelsey in the NFL, it's going to be him in the situation he is because he has Kyler, he has that good quarterback. And we saw it last year. Like once they unleashed Trey McBride, he was one of the best tight ends in the NFL. Like the things he was doing, he was the focal point of the passing attack. And this was the offense that had still had Hollywood Brown, like who's a capable wide receiver. But Trey McBride was like, yo, dude, hold my beer. Let me take this over. And he was legit the best player on the Arizona Cardinals last year. So yeah, if you like, it's very sketchy to do like, 8 game paces or whatever it is, but he was rock steady. He was getting like 18 fantasy points a game for like week 9 on. So he had the ridiculous college profile coming out of college. Like it was absurd. The skill set, the athleticism is all there. This is what we look for from tight ends, and he's young and in a good situation. So he checks all the boxes for me. So that's why I have him tight end 1. But if you wanted to go Brock Bowers, like totally get it. Brock Bowers is a stud. You won't get any shade from me. Like those 2 guys are just the elite of the elite. I want them all on my roster. So round 4, absolutely smash.
For me, the only question that we have there is whether, like you said, Emmett Shea is going to come in and just dominate targets, and then they'll be forced not to make McBride the focal point of the offense. Even if that does happen, you still only have 2 capable pass catchers there. Who else is Kyler throwing the ball to? It ain't Rondale Moore, that's for sure.
Right, exactly.
The ghost of Andy Isabella, who I don't even think is on the team anymore. But it's only those 2 guys. So let's recap the 4th round real quick. After I took Drake London, the 4-3, we have ETN followed by Devonta Smith, and Jesse, we'll just keep an eye on your timer here. We have Drake May, Devon A-Chain, McBride from Jesse. Then it was Pittman, Metcalf, Tank Dell. Travis Kelce goes at the 4-12, followed by Mark Andrews at the 5-2, in between is T. Higgins. And then you have James Cook, which is a long time before since we had a running back there. I guess it was A-Chan, and then Zay Flowers. So, Jesse, you're back up on the block with 2 quarterbacks, Rome, Dunze, and Trey McBride. Where are you going next?
So if I was doing this just for picking for values, like I'm taking Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers here. But since we're not trading, this makes it a really interesting dilemma for me because I kind of have to take a guy I'm not super comfortable with. So I either have to go and get the running back or like take another wide receiver. And I much prefer to take a wide receiver or a running back. I got 6 seconds. We are just going to do it. We are going to take DJ Moore and roll with it. He's a little lower in my values just because of his age. Like as far, he's like my wide receiver 15, 16. So, I mean, we're at like wide receiver 20 plus at this point, but once all of the guys that kind of went and once the top 3 wide receivers, the rookie wide receivers went, I was like, you know what, let's just take the best guy on the board. And as you can see, we have a run at tight end because the value on these tight ends, getting them in this range. Interestingly enough, the Hawkinson one is odd to me because you should not be taking the guy that's not going to play all year ahead of Kyle Pitts and Brock Bowers. Like that's a whole thing with the computer auto selection. But yeah, I think those are all 3 really good tight ends. And that kind of like levels out the tight end. There's one more guy for me personally in that tier. It's Dalton Kincaid. Not for everybody, but for me. So like that kind of leaves us where we're at, I'd say.
Yeah. And so after the 3 of those guys went, I would have taken one of those guys for sure here. I'm very comfortable with kind of a 0 RB approach. But now that I'm looking at things, I mean, I got a couple of guys on my board, but a couple of wide receivers I'm happy to see fall. And tight end for me, Kincaid, Kittle, and Njoku. I'm going to pass on those guys for now. So it's up to QB2, who I'm not really enamored with at the moment, or it's kind of where I think yeah, I got you. It's Saquon Barkley. I think he's fallen way too far. I mean, we don't have too many years of production here left with Barkley, but we know that as long as he's healthy, he's going to produce like an absolute beast. If he's in the Giants, I think that's probably his worst case scenario because any team that's paying up for Barkley is going to be a contender, and they're going to give him the rock. So, if he stays with the Giants, I think he'll be fine. He'll be kind of producing at, it looks like about RB 10, 11 here. Numbers, I think he's certainly capable of being an RB1 still in this league for a couple of years. And then if he goes somewhere else, it could be kind of a situation where he just kind of jumps through the moon and is able to hit that elite top 6 season, at least for one more year. So we'll see how it goes with Barkley, but I'm happy to get him here. Afterwards, it was Deshaun Watson, followed by Addison and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Those are 2 great picks at the turn and guys I was considering. And then I'm just going to see how this goes. This isn't usually how I roll here, but I'm going to go ahead and take one of my favorite running backs in the NFL.
The juggernaut, baby.
And one of my favorite running backs, for fantasy, it's Isaiah Pacheco, right? We've seen the Kansas City Chiefs and exactly how they operate. This guy is just an insane tough runner of the football. I'm happy to get Barkley and Pacheco here turning on, and I can turn off looking at other running backs until much, much later.
This is the problem I've run into is because I faded running back to the point where it's just gross. Yeah. And I'm like I personally think Josh Jacobs is the best running back of these guys, and it's really not that close. But like you could go Rachaad White, you get the ugly points. The issue is they're talking about bringing in competition for him as well. So I really don't want to do that as well because he's just not an efficient runner. So ideally we go wide receiver. I'm actually just going to skip all of these wide receivers and go straight for the rookie and take the top rookie who I have as Brian Thomas and Xavier Worthy. I've gone back and forth between the 2 of these guys, but like you should, at this range of the draft, you should draft the young players. Let the old guys fall. The value's not there. So personally, I don't mind small guys. I just think Brian Thomas is more secure. Yep, we're gonna go Brian Thomas here, and we're just gonna roll with it. Yeah. His profile is a little weird, so there is some concern with it, but you just have to trust the athleticism. It's like 99th. I think he was the 10th best RAS score of all time at wide receiver yesterday. Yeah. Just absurd stuff what he's doing down the field. So I think he's a very good player. And then following that, we had Debo. Good pick, Dalton Kincaid, 6'10", that steal. And then Rachaad White and Najee Harris rounding out round 6 for us. So overall, you can kind of see how values are falling from this. And you can see how Deli's actually take advantage of the market with the rookies. Because if we're actually running startup mocks, like our drafts, these 3 guys in this order is never going to happen. But he's taking advantage of how this draft is playing out. So, kudos to him for taking advantage of that. Because Jaden Daniels should be like a late second-round pick and startup ADP. The 103, right? So, like, this is the issue we're running to with sleeper ADP. So take that in the mindset. Like this would change how drafts are going. But we got 2 more running backs rounding out the 7th. We had Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, Jared Goff, and then the stud of stud wide receivers. I don't care if he's old, Devontae Adams. Like that's just you're getting production and you're getting a fantastic player. So it gets really interesting because this team I'm building, like it's basically a lot of young guys with the exception of DJ Moore and Lamar Jackson. So I don't really need to chase production here, but I could hammer it to kind of mix bag it instead of going to a team that's not really going to win. Who knows? Maybe they do, but Do I just take another wide receiver to fill out my flex spots, or do I just keep punting running back and grab like a Tajay Spears, who everyone is like over the moon about, which value-wise, I think it's probably the best bet to go with. Or, you go wide receiver, you can take Pickens, you could take, the older guys, Watson, or we can, I just let Worthy fall here too. So I think I'm just going to take the other wide receiver who I like out of this tier of rookies. Or we're just going to go Worthy. We're going to just go back to back. We're going young.
Guy.
So yeah, welcome to the squad, Mr. Young, short guy who absolutely balls out. Let's go Worthy. As a short king myself, I respect Worthy. He's got to be on the team.
Yeah, I mean, he's really a lot of these wide receivers improve their draft stock, and Worthy no more than Worthy. I mean, I don't think nobody knew that Worthy was going to go ahead and break the 40-time record, but certainly we knew he was fast, right? And so you think about, well, the combine shouldn't totally change your view of a player. Well, if he's going to go ahead and post the fastest 40-time of all time at the combine, you're just going to start daydreaming of, where could he land? Is he a first round pick now? Which, I hope an NFL is smart and says, oh, this guy is also a pretty good route runner. Oh, this guy, despite his slight frame, can also, operate and like has good hands and can operate on a football field, unlike a John Ross, whose record he broke, from a couple of years ago. So, I think Worthy is totally worthy of the 7.5 pick. And, he probably will go a lot sooner than that. Will he be priced out of my price range? It's very possible. So
it's entirely possible. Yeah. If he's going to the 7th round, I think that's a steal. More than likely, given with his startup ADP and what's going to happen, he's going to get pushed up because people love that analytical profile, even though he is smaller. I think the Trey Benson pick is very interesting to take him where he was taking, because I get it. I said he's a day 2 pick. There's still not assurance of where he goes and where he turns out, but I think he's a good player. So I don't mind taking the gamble on him at that spot. I think that's good. And then
I'm going to go here and again go with a running back and a guy who for me is completely devalued. And it's really just because of injury. I know there's guys like Tajay Spears on the board, and Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, but I'm going to go ahead and grab Ramondre Stevenson. He's an absolute baller back there when he's healthy. The concern is he going to be healthy? What are the Patriots going to be doing on offense? Who are they going to add to that backfield? Does Zeke come back, et cetera, et cetera? I don't care. Ramondre is capable of doing it on all 3 downs. And he's one of those workhorse backs who should and could easily fall into that workhorse role. And if they spell him, he just has a higher likelihood of being healthy. So for me, Ramondre is far too low. And I'll go ahead and go running back heavy here in the middle of the draft, in the dead zone.
I know you're the answer to the 0 RB guy, but you are hammering them out. I mean, it's just the value, right? It's long to you can't. Hard to really blame you for going that. It's definitely turns you into a more productive team because you're getting that production now from those running backs, and you're pairing it with a really good wide receiver core. So I get it.
Yeah. So that's the idea. After Ramondre, we had David Montgomery and Cooper Kupp, pretty old, productive vets who I like them both for next season. Tajay Spears there from Aaron on the turn, which is a great pick. And then Christian Kirk, who is undervalued every single year. We're going to do it again, undervalue him again. And if you're taking George Pickens over Christian Kirk, I think you're in for a rude awakening, just in terms of production. I mean, Pickens has all the talent in the world, but Christian Kirk was on a ridiculous, torrid pace. So for me, I really like those picks. And here I have 3 solid running backs. There's guys like Tony Pollard out still on the board, who I'm going to pass on. Derrick Henry could be interesting, but what does he have left in the tank? For me, I went kind of a little crazy by pushing my QB2. I'm not going to let him go to the late 9th round here. And I have a decision to make, but I'm going to go with the youth. Instead of Matt Stafford, I'm going to go Kirk Cousins.
Yes, sir.
We know wherever he lands, he's going to be productive. He's going to make that whole team better. And if he lands somewhere like Atlanta, where they have elite weapons, it's going to be he's going to be well worth this pick here in the 8th round.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it. Kirk Cousins, as long as he's healthy, he's going to put up another top 12 fantasy season for you. So getting him there in the 8th, it's like the 8th through 10th round. People just don't like Kirk Cousins. And I'm like, you know what? Just give me the production. He's so good.
That's it.
So this gets interesting because I really don't like the running back values in this range. I'm paying for guys that are either backups or they're older, where it's strictly production. And you could go Tony Pollard. I'm just going to keep hammering out rookies, and I'm going to go with the guy that has fallen a lot. I mean, I love Lloyd, but I'm just going to take him here. We're just going to roll with it. I get the ADPs out of whack, but I'm going to take as much as I love Bucky, I just don't think it's going to happen for him, unfortunately. So pour one out for my guy, Bucky. We're going to take Marshawn Lloyd, who absolutely was just fantastic yesterday. So I'll take him here and go with that.
Yeah, he looked great at the combine. I mean, he's a guy for me. I know we've had more than a few discussions about who our RB1 is. And, Jonathan Brooks looked great, but has the injury to deal with. I thought Trey Benson was another guy who looked amazing at the combine. But Marshawn Lloyd personally is a running back who raised his stock the most for me. He just looked far more electric with more burst. He was nice and fast. I forget what his 40 time was, but it was in the 4.4s, wasn't it?
For Benson or Lloyd?
For Lloyd. I know Benson was a 4.39, but I think Lloyd was a high 4.4s or low 4.5s.
I think he was low 4.4s. I can look it up. I'm not 100%
sure. But and he looks so smooth and effortless catching the football. And I think for me, proving that he could be a guy who's a 3-down workhorse. Not that he will have that role, but that he could have that role. For me, that raised his stock, and he's easily for me the RB2 in this class.
Yeah, he ran a 4.46 yesterday, and with running backs continually getting pushed down, this is I don't usually play boards this way because I like to have competitive rosters in year one. But the way this board is playing, it's just like running backs and rookies keep falling. So I'm just gonna take the other guy we were just talking about. And that's Jonathan Brooks. He's on the watch list. Where is he? Actually, if I can find him, let's see. Hey, did somebody take him? Oh no, somebody took him.
Was he gone? Oh yeah, the 9-1. That was SC.
SC, you son of a biscuit. I thought he was there. All right. So this kind of sucks with the rookies now. I guess I actually still like Corum. I'm just gonna take him here because as much as I'm not a Braylon Allen guy. Like I still need him to show it. He's a tank. He's not for me. I think Blake Corum is still like a very good running back. And if I'm taking the older production, I'll take the young guy here. I think he's gonna get the draft capital. And I could be massively wrong on this, but he's a good running back, and I'm just gonna stand for him right there and go with it.
Nice. Yeah. And so in the 8th round, we had, let's see, from your pick, which was Marshawn Lloyd, we had Chris Godwin, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, and Troy Franklin at the 8-12, followed by Jonathan Brooks. So SC, they're cleaning up on rookies, as many of us are doing here as they fall because the auto pick has ridiculous ADP for these rookies so far. They will not be available here, especially Franklin, although he did not help himself at all, even hurt his stock a little bit. For me, running it was like a 4.46 or something, something that was
slender
like,
man. Yeah, he's just really skinny. He's a slender man. He did a really good job. But it is what it is, right?
Yeah. So Brooks at the 9-1. Then you have Deontay Johnson, Marquise Brown. That's some good value on the vet receivers there. Kittle. Then you have Corum, Amari Cooper, Tony Pollard, Will Levis, and Austin Eckler. So all of those veteran running backs coming in. And I'm looking at my team here. I don't have a tight end right now, so I definitely need one. We'll see how that maps out. But I'm going to go ahead and take the guy who won the national championship and didn't necessarily win it for his team, but didn't lose it for his team, which is really all he was asked to do. What's he going to be doing at the next level? We're not totally sure. But if you are reading the tea leaves and following the NFL buzz here, JJ McCarthy could be a top 3 pick. He certainly should be a top 15 pick. We'll see who's going to take the plunge. But if he ends up in a good spot and they let him air the ball out, that's great. If not, he's running around like a madman. I think he had the fifth best 3-cone drill in the entire combine yesterday. So JJ McCarthy's my pick there.
Yeah, that was like usually quarterbacks don't run that drill, so I was surprised to see it. He's like, "Hey, guess what, man? I'm quick. Don't worry about it." You're like,
"That's it."
Yes, you are. You absolutely proved it.
Yep. Amazing. So we'll see if he can do it at the next level. I don't think his throwing was very impressive yesterday. So we're just gonna have to see how he's managed. But if 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 the Chargers end up trading Justin Herbert and drafting McCarthy, things could get very interesting. Who knows what the heck's going to happen? I just feel like there's something big on the horizon in this draft that we haven't even accounted for. That's just going to blow people's minds. That would certainly be one of them. But we'll see what happens. I like McCarthy as my QB3 there. So we have Josh Downs at the 9-11, followed by Roshan Johnson, then Jameson Williams, who I still have hope for. Maybe it's false hope, but I still have some hope for. And then David Njoku at the 10-2. So I really love Adonai Mitchell. I'd probably take him here if I did. He had the second fastest time, tied with Brian Thomas, right? BTJ.
Yeah.
He really helped his entire stock. I really love, going wide receiver heavy here, but I need a tight end. And so I'm going to go ahead and take a guy who is ultra productive and should be once again, even though he's on the older side, Nevin Ingram. I think he's kind of the last tight end there that has the ability to kind of help you win a week and really dominate at the tight end position. A lot of those other guys are just young or just guys hanging out in the middle. But Ingram, even though older, can dominate there.
Yeah, and I mean he's just gonna produce. Like you saw what he did last year. He had like 127 targets or just something ridiculous, and he's gonna see that again this year. The offense, like Ridley's not coming back, so it's probably opening up for him again. Christian Kirk's coming off an injury. Like I think he's gonna ball out. So 100% with you. Then Aaron Jones, Zach Charbonnet, Calvin Ridley, Jake Ferguson. I think those tight ends in the round 10. That's just insane value. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna wax politically about my guy Pretty Ricky Purcell because the dude's just really good, and like I get it. We could chase the absurd athleticism that Mitchell provides, but I'm gonna take a guy who I think is really good. And I know people love McConkey, but I personally Purcell's my guy, so I'm gonna draft him. The guy he's a do-it-all wide receiver, could play inside and out. He tested really well, kind of went under the radar yesterday. Like he balled out. I think he was like a 9.4, 9.5 on the RAS score. He looks like he's gonna be locked into a day 2 pick. Like he's gonna go in and he's pro ready. So I think he does a lot of what you're looking for in the NFL. Like you could mix and match and move him all over the field. So I'm really excited to see where he goes and what team he lands on personally.
Yeah. I mean, there's no hate with that pick. The only thing I'll say is, everybody, the announcers on the combine, were going on and saying, well, all the NFL scouts are saying they really, Lad McConkey is going to be a great NFL receiver, but we really hope he doesn't go to the Chiefs. And if Lad McConkey goes to the Chiefs at the end of the first round, holy crap. I mean, that's just wheels up as Kelsey declines. I mean, but yeah, Ricky Pearsall there, Adonai Mitchell, who goes to SC at the end of the draft, of course. I mean, those picks are fantastic. Here's the thing, and the big takeaway for me, both in this draft and in the combine and what we've seen, we all knew this wide receiver group coming in was deep. We all, that was confirmed. You got guys like Malachi Corley, like Roman Wilson, like, who am I missing in that next year? Your guy, Jalen McMillan, right? There's a lot of wide receivers coming in who are going to be good wide receiver 2s on their own team, or like even just productive wide receiver 3 slot guy options as well. So one thing that's interesting is, sure, they're all coming in, but then they're going to be pushing the value down in the next year, right? These guys are going to get a year under their belt, and then this entire board is going to look completely different because a couple of those guys in that second, third, fourth tier are going to pop. And then, most of these guys in these elite tiers are crushing it already. So I just think wide receiver, you got to go up and get your guy. You got to get young guys who are going to produce, who are elite. And then, you take your swings at running back. But yeah, those wide receivers, if you don't have them, I mean, you took a crap ton of them in this draft too, Jesse, right? Yeah. If you don't have those wide receivers, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. So that was massive yesterday, and it'll continue to affect our drafts all off season.
Yeah, I think running back, it's inherently like tight end. You want the elites. It's the haves and have-nots. I want the high-end elite running backs. I really don't care about the RB2. Like, this is, like, with this draft, I'm just going to fade running back because I can find someone to replace it. You give me Najee Harris for a late second-round pick. It does. Just insert whatever running back in for that cheap production, and you roll with it. Unless you have the Bijan, the Jahmyr Gibbs, like those truly elite guys, I really don't care about it. And same thing with tight end. Like, I want one of those top 8 tight ends. I want those guys. Wide receiver, like, this class is one of the better classes we probably had in the last decade. It's really up there, like the 2014 class. Like, it's just stacked. And wide receiver is already so deep as it is. So it just creates this, just like, you could just print value with these, like, young wide receivers coming into the league. So, yeah, I'm with you. Just stack wide receivers. They hold up so much better longer. And, yeah, just go for the elites of the other position. Like, I want the difference makers. So that's kind of where my head's at with the way Dynasty is shaping up right now.
Yeah, totally agree with you. In terms of your team here, Jesse, I know you were mentioning it towards the end there about change in philosophy based on how it all ironed out. But like, how would you operate with this core going into year 1, year 2? Like, what do you think? Based on how you project it to finish out in the league, what are you doing with a team in the core like this?
So the way I'm looking at this roster is obviously we don't have the draft picks on top of it, right? So like usually people have draft picks where they'll draft. Without that, and you're just looking at the rosters, like clearly my roster is not as competitive as the rest of the rosters, and I'm actually okay with that. Like it, I mean, I think McBride's for sure a guy that's going to hit. DJ Moore, those are the two guys that I have. I can count on production. The rest of the guys, it is like it's a guessing game. We don't know. So from there, I'm more than likely going to punt year one, and I'm just going to try to accumulate more assets and put it into year two with this build. Like I have Lamar, I could package it out if I wanted to, but I could just ride Lamar and Caleb for another year. And with this roster, and if it hits, which it could hit, like I could be a surprise contender this year. So like ideally, I'll probably punt, but I'll just like lay low, see how it goes out to start the year. If we start hitting, then like okay, obviously this team's good. We go from it. If we don't, we sell off like DJ Moore. You know, we make moves, then we go into year like 2025 with a stacked roster. And it's really you kind of just this is what I love about startup drafts. It's kind of like you can play it however you want, but you get a feel of how the draft's going, and you can kind of adjust your plan. So you see people taking the veterans early, you're like, all right, a lot of people are going for contention. I'm going to go for picks, rookie picks, or on the flip side, right? You can go the other way. It's just, it really depends on your draft and knowing your league mates. And I think once you know how that goes, it's a lot easier to formulate a plan for you. Yeah. How are you feeling about your roster? Because you have some serious running backs and like some high-end pieces that you're pushing you into contention in year one. Where is your plan with this team?
And so usually I love the way that you approach it and what you were talking about the competing in year two, right? That's always how I like to approach it. I like to grab the young guys who are going to rise in value. Aging vets for me are usually off the board completely, like a Mike Evans, for example. Although I was considering him in this particular build because after the first few picks, after Drake London, we're looking at Saquon Barkley, Isaiah Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson. Oh, crap. That was good value, but I would need to win now, right? Like, so we need to make sure that we turn this team into a contender. And so that's why you get a stable QB2 in Kirk Cousins. You get Evan Ingram, who's going to produce at tight end, even though he's much older than, say, a Jake Ferguson, who could develop into a perennial, top 6-8 guy. Eventually, he's just 24, which always kind of blows my mind when I think about it with Jake Ferguson. Right. But yeah, Evan Ingram is going to produce. I think he's going to be 30 years old this year. So that's a consideration. But that's also why I took JJ McCarthy there. The value fell. So I'm looking to compete right away. I think if I'm continuing to build this roster, I'm going to take a few rookies who I hope hit, but mostly I'm going to be looking at those veteran wide receivers and trying to kind of insulate my running back picks with a few lesser known guys. Like if I'm looking at the board, I might go with, let's say, like Antonio Gibson and hope that he, finds his way into a meaningful situation. I might take a chance on someone like a Khalil Herbert and just hope that he's able to hold off Roshan for a year or two there, or at least carve out a meaningful role. And then someone like Zach Moss, who certainly showed out this year. There's some reports that he's going to be staying in Indy potentially, but if he moves on and finds that, Deontay Foreman, second career where he's able to just latch on and just consistently beat out the other guys in that room and get meaningful touches each year, right? That's kind of where I'm leaning. So looking for that immediate year one contention. That's not usually the way I roll, but that's how I'm going to have to roll with this roster.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting because the way we had to fill roster spots with this draft, like we couldn't not draft positions. Yeah. So for me, like if I'm playing this more like a traditional startup, I'm not even touching running backs in the 8-9 range. I'm just continuing to hammer wide receivers, and I'm just gonna just like because my pick 6, I could kind of tell where the thing was going, and I was like, all right, we're just gonna go young with the rest of these picks and just play it out. So I would just continue to just go chase youth and just take rookie picks. And a lot of drafts, you'll see punters or kickers in place of the rookie picks because we haven't had drafts yet. So I think with the actual rookie players, it makes it a little bit more interesting because you kind of have to take a leap and a chance with these guys because we don't know where their landing spot is. We don't know where they're going to draft capital. A few of these guys we like these running backs I took, they might not get day 2 capital, right? And they might fall into that situation. So there's a lot of risk reward with doing a draft before the NFL draft. Like I think it's a more extreme version of play. If you want to live that lifestyle, go for it. Personally, it terrifies me because you're putting serious risk into these picks. But yeah, you just play it and see how it goes. But I like what SC did as well because he took those guys that fell to him. Dak Prescott the third, that's easy. They got Kelsey. The Kelsey picks, interestingly, like I'm kind of surprised he took Kelsey over Mark Andrews and Brock Bowers and those guys. But if you want to get the elite producer and just ride him off into the sunset, I totally get it. It's basically the 5th round at that point. It's not really going to cost you a lot. And then, he found the veteran producers, T. Higgins, and then Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs. Those guys are going to give you 200 plus points this year. And then he rounded out with like young rookies. I think that's a good way to kind of like mix and match where you have your young core, and then you have your elite producers, and then you add in kind of veteran players like you're talking about, like with like a Mike Evans or whoever it is, right? It kind of gives you the best of both worlds where you don't have to be all in 1 year or you don't have to be all out in 1 year. It kind of gives you a middle ground where you can, play it. And I always like going that way because it gives you the most outs, and that's usually the best strategy in my opinion.
Yeah. And plus, when you're on the edge there, right, sometimes you got to reach for your guys, right? Travis Kelce, there's no chance he was coming back around. Like you said, you could go Mark Andrews, but, if you're a believer that Kelce is going to be there, for another 2-3 years and able to put up elite production in most of that time, if healthy, then, I have no issue going Travis Kelce there. I don't know that I believe that, but I can understand plenty of people who do. If you look at the other end, then you have Aaron, who's at the 112. And so he started off with Anthony Richardson and then Bijan. For me, those are two chalky picks, but not in a bad way. There's just guys who belong there, right? Richardson and Bijan just have that elite upside, and that's what you want early on in the draft. For me, Tua, I'm not a believer in his long-term talent. He's got a situation there, which is phenomenal, obviously. I just wonder at what point Mike McDaniel is going to say this experiment is over. You're only, you're giving us, you're putting us at 80%. We need someone to put us over the top. So I'm skeptical about Tua, but while he's there, he's going to produce. He does need to step up though. But then the rest of his picks are fantastic. You got Laporta, Addison, JSN, Cooper Kupp there just to kind of insulate all that young wide receiver value and talent there. And then Tajay and Roshan, like you were talking about, he's got his locked in RB1 and Bijan, and then he's just taking swings at RB2. Those guys go. I mean, Tajay Spears is just such an athletic freak. He showed what he could do last season. I don't think that Tennessee is going to, I mean, they shouldn't, give him a workhorse role, but if they did, like he could awesome. Go off, awesome. so it's really interesting to see and to think about how it could shake out, but the range of outcomes for Tajay Spears, if they were just like, F it YOLO, like Tajay,
let's go. Yeah.
That guy is going to be a top 5 running back. There's no doubt about it if he can stay healthy. And Roshan Johnson, I'm a big believer in his talent. I don't know that Chicago is going to be in a place where he's going to be able to produce like a monster this season or even next season. But that Chicago team is in a better spot than a lot of these 101 teams that we've seen. It wasn't even their 101 pick, right? It was Carolina's, but they just worked the trades and the Carolina Panthers, really, they worked them hard in that deal. And, they're just coming out like huge winners, and they got a decent defense. So Roshan is a pretty good bet there. And then Jameson Williams at the end. I mean, if you want to take a shot at elite talent, it is what it is.
Now that would be spicy.
Wait, hang on. Is that a thing? Is that like someone saying that that's happening?
I think with the Bears logo and their emblem, I think that's just some wish casting. That would be awesome. You pair him with Caleb Williams. And the interesting thing with Chicago is their defense. Once they traded for Montez Sweat, they went into a top 2 defense on points allowed. They were incredible. So they could be a contender that people are sleeping on. Yeah, I know exactly. He says he wishes. He's really good.
But I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind that at all.
But
we had one on my team.
No, you're good, Trey. Like we talk about Tajay, you heard his GM come out glowingly. Rod Carthen was like, Tajay's made of the right shit. And when you hear a GM talk about a player in that mindset, they're absolutely going. He might not be getting 80th percentile, 90th work. Well, he's going to be a featured part of that offense. And I know we had the concerns about his negative ACLs, basically having no ACLs in his knee, but the guy's a stud. So I actually like that pick. And Roshan, it's just Aaron loves Roshan. We talked about this last year going into the draft. Roshan is his guy, so I don't mind someone swinging on their guy in the 9th round because the realistic range of outcomes for these guys 9th, 10th round is you're not getting true difference makers. So it's okay to swing bigger the farther back you get in the draft, right? Because you're not getting a guy that's going to be a startup pick like the 105 next year. That's just not possible, right? They might raise a little bit. Usually it's quarterbacks that fall, and we had some quarterbacks fall in our draft. We have guys like Baker, Stafford, Geno, Russell, all these veterans that can give you that production. So if you punted quarterback, usually it's between rounds 5 and 7 where you kind of have to make that decision. But our draft, the way it fell, it worked out, right? So yeah, I don't mind doing that at all. It's just you kind of have to play the board and go with it. It's really, and it's running back, man. Like they're just, you cycle through those guys. And I'm basically turning into you with how I'm viewing running backs. It's like just 0 RB, just punt them, which, I used to be all bullet running back. Like I think my first Dynasty startup, I had like Saquon, CMC, and like somebody else like out the gates. And I was like, let's go. And then I was like, oh no, this is backfired so bad. So yeah, it's you just see the shifting nature of Dynasty and how it's like just wide receivers are the safer play. You can go win now production and get those guys. And you could absolutely win year one. You just have to be careful because that cliff comes. Case in point, Austin Eckler, like nobody even wants Austin Eckler. Like you can't, like you get him, it's like, all right, I'll give you a 3rd round pick. And it's like, all right, cool. What do I do with this guy? So who knows? He might be broadcasting this year. We don't know if he's going to be in the league. So it's just, it comes quickly, man. Like
I totally agree. And yeah, I've been team 0 IB for years, but mostly it's because of how the market was viewing running backs and taking all these running backs in the 1st and 2nd round. Now you see the board. There were begrudgingly 4 running backs taken, 5 in the first 3 rounds, right? And nobody took 2 running backs until the 4th round. So it's really a completely shifting landscape when you're talking about running backs. But I'm also kind of pivoting from that 0 RB strategy and looking at the value that you can have in a so-called dead RB dead zone, which is, I believe it's JJ Zachariason who kind of coined that term, or someone who coined that term, but at least he promotes it. And it more applies to redraft than anything else. But if you look at kind of the value here of Barkley in the late 5th, Pacheco in the 6th, and Stevenson in the late 7th, I mean, those guys are just guys who are going to produce for you. And while that's not ever how I want to draft, at the same time, if I can plug those guys in and I have 3 RB1s, which is certainly possible in year one, then, if they stay healthy, then, I'm just going to ride that production all day. And, you just pivot, you see what you can do. I have 3 stud receivers, and, it's just a matter of what you're looking to accomplish. And in Dynasty, I want to have a guy for 10, 15 years if I can. But the reality of the situation, the reality of the NFL is these guys last for, 4 elite seasons before falling off the cliff completely, most of these guys. So I'll just take guys who I know I can produce.
100%. And I think it with running back specifically, once you get to the James Cook pick, the 503, like I'm bullish on James Cook. I have him closer to the Devon Achane tier. I know a lot of people don't, but like you could go down to basically into, the Josh Jacobs range of outcomes, like the 701, and say those guys are all the same tier running back, right? Like you could realistically make that case, which speaks to what you're talking about, where it's values falling, and you're just taking the running back of your choice, because at some point you do have to take running back, like as much as we're going to fade it, right?
So you got to fill those slots.
Yeah, exactly, right. So yeah, it's pivoting and like going against how the market views running backs right now. And I think it's actually a good time in the offseason to buy them, because especially the veteran running backs, you could buy them for really cheap. The rookies, they have that new syndrome, like the new toy syndrome, where everybody's like, oh, I got to have the rookie. When you get to the older guys, like, and this happens with Javonte Williams, he's down in like basically the 9th round. We see this all the time. Guys kind of fall out of favor. You can get Tony Pollard probably for like a 3rd round for somebody. Like you can get these guys people just don't care about, and you could just have them on your roster, continually play the 1-year cycle with running back and just get instant production. It's kind of, it's not necessarily cheat code, but it's an easy way to go if you want to be a competitive team each and every year. Just buy the cheap running back that will produce. Like works every time. Look at Aaron Jones in the 10th. Like that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out Deli FF. So thanks for joining us and drafting with us from the 7 hole.
Yep.
And he did kind of the same thing, right? At the end of the draft in the 8th, he took Joe Mixon. In the 9th, he took Tony Pollard. Those are 2 guys who, as long as they, land in situations, maybe Mixon stays in Cincy, maybe he moves. But if they land in situations where they're going to get the volume, we know these guys can produce. So he went the same route while also taking Trey Benson as his RB1. He started the draft with Justin Jefferson, Marvin Harrison, and Jalen Waddle. So that's nothing to sniff at either. Building your team around those 3 elite young wide receivers, taking Drake May, Brock Bowers, and Jaden Daniels. So then 3 rookies to fill out those important positions. Look, if those quarterbacks and Bowers hit in year 1, this guy's competing in year 1 and for the next 10 years,
Yeah,
right?
exactly
So
right.
so that's a fantastic draft. I'm a Calvin Ridley homer as well. So I love the Ridley pick. I do think he bounces back.
I mean, we hope so. We
From
certainly
what
hope
happened
so.
last season, but a lot's going to depend where he lands and who's throwing him the ball for sure. Just a failed experiment there. But yeah, Deli, thanks for joining us and absolutely crushed this draft and took advantage, like we all tried to do, of these bots and this terrible ADP at this point in early March as we, try to mock out a startup draft.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of fun, and it's a fun experiment to do for yourself to kind of see how values play and where it goes. It's a little bit more interesting with startup because you're not able to trade, and you're not getting the rookie picks in this, so it does take a little bit, but you see where players are falling, and that gives you a good idea. If you're curious, I think another good example is I'll shout out Deco here on Fantasy Football FF. He does the Dynasty Data Lab, which pulls all the sleeper data. So if you want actual like legit drafts where people are going and you see the values, go check that out. I think it's a wonderful tool to use. I use it all the time. It kind of keeps me in check when I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's my running back 8. And then I go look and he's like, well, actually he's RB 17 by consensus. I'm like, all right, that means I'm just super high on this guy. It's good to know because we can kind of get our own heads and roll with it. But yeah, I think that's a great tool to use. There's a lot of good places you can check out. We'll be releasing our rankings here in the next couple of days, so you can see our rankings on our website, the Fantasy Football Universe. I think it'll be a cool thing to see where we line up to consensus. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining us on this fun little stream we had. And we'll be doing more stuff this week. I think we're going to do some more rookie breakdowns probably tomorrow or the next day and just roll through past the combine. So yeah. What's your like main takeaway from this event?
Meaning not the combine, meaning the draft itself?
Yeah, sorry, from the draft. I'm all over the place right
now. Yeah, no. So for me, again, it's just really good to see where these values are all the time. Personally, I'm someone who's just mock drafting at all points during the off season just to kind of, assess value. I think it's the same idea with like watching the combine, right? We had a sense of, how we felt about some of these players. We had some serious confirmation bias, and we had some guys kind of fall off, like your Bucky Irving, for example, just falling off the cliff and totally changing your opinion of a player, right? And that's why it's good, because if you're always staying in touch and in tune with values, you have a good sense of how it fluctuated. You never know what's going to happen with Bucky, where he's going to be drafted, and it could totally sway you back to your original opinion. But if you have a lot more of those fluctuations in your value, you can find a good middle ground. And I think, doing something like a number of mock drafts, whether it's a rookie draft or a startup, you're getting those kind of fluctuations in value and seeing who falls so that you can develop this solid baseline where okay, this player is likely to be available here. So if I pass on him in 6, 8, 10 picks, it's very possible I can get them around later. And you're always hunting for value there. So for me, it's just seeing where the value is currently. Someone like Stephon Diggs going at the 602. I get it. He's an older player, but Stephon Diggs could just as easily just get his mind right and bounce back and just be a top 6 guy. Is it likely? Probably not. But that kind of risk is baked into that price. He's still got the ability to do it. So it's just really interesting for me to see the values. How about yourself? What are you thinking about this mock, and what are you thinking about mocks in general?
Yeah, and like when you talk about these older wide receivers, like Devontae Adams falls in that tier a round and a half later at 704. Like even Cooper Kupp, like he's not the Cooper Kupp that he once was, but he's 712, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's the discount's already there with them. You're not really losing anything by investing in them. And this is the thing where you just take the value that falls. So like I noticed that particularly in this draft too, even though people were taking a lot of these older guys a little bit earlier than normal, there's still guys that continually fall. And we see this like Deontay Johnson, 912. That just the value always falls. So you can wait and you don't have to pay the premium for the older guys. That's why you pay the premium for the young guys, because it's value insulation. The older guys you're paying for production, so you can just wait, they'll fall, and then you take it with Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Calvin Ridley, like you talk about, they're gonna produce. They're still good players. It's just they don't have the value. So that's always my takeaway in Dynasty startups. It's like if you want to go startup and win now in year 1, you could easily do it. This always comes true. We see this every time. So just keep that in mind, and that's something that I constantly reinforce with myself. And it's not a surprise that every single team, almost every team I build, is basically win now because it's just too easy in Dynasty to do that. But yeah, I think that's probably my biggest takeaway from this. So yeah, what do you think? You want to wrap it up on that note?
Yeah, I think so. I think, look, as Jesse mentioned earlier, you can find us at fantasyfootballuniverse.com. We're everywhere on the socials. We're on Twitter. We're doing stuff on TikTok. We got the YouTube Shorts coming out, or the Reels, or whatever the heck. Instagram Reels, it's or on Insta. We're everywhere. So you can find us. We like to refer to ourselves as the double FU or the FU times 2, whatever you prefer. Either way, but we're getting after it here with a bunch of rookie profiles and breakdowns. We got a ton of mocks happening weekly at this point. And just, trying to do it in a bunch of different ways to get out as much quality content as possible. And, thanks for tuning in. And, for Jesse Moeller at jmoeller05 on Twitter, or X, for myself at ff_rebel. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you for the next one.
All right. Take care, folks.